And I'd like to introduce our next Audiokinetic developer. Welcome, Samuel Longchamps.
Hello, Damien. Hello, everyone on the web listening to us either right now or later on YouTube.
Yeah. So you are no stranger to this live streaming format. We have been doing a series of Wwise Up on Air's hands-on with Wwise plugins over the last few months. And so great to have you as part of this event.
It's always a pleasure to come in with the community, see and show what we've been up to for a year now. So
yeah, awesome. Well, I'm excited for your presentation today. And you have some slides you want to put into the
I sure do. So let's do that.
I love the way this all comes together in the best possible way. And with that, I'm going to hand... Yeah,
I'm just going to put up the slide correctly. That's going to help.
Excellent. And for folks who don't know or haven't tuned into any of our plugin live streams over the last few months, we have a series going. The first one introduces you to Wwise plugins, establishing your environment using Visual Studio, using the tools that we have to automate the process of getting set up. And then in part two, we go a little bit deeper into being able to, create a plugin, get some information back into Wwise authoring to see the metering of that plugin, and I'm going to hand it over to Samuel now to talk more about this authoring plugin API. So take it away, Samuel.
All right. So my name again, Samuel. I'm responsible for the cross-platform UI team. So we're working on trying to improve the experience in general in Wwise, but in 2021.1, we've been tasked with trying to come up with a strategy for plugin to make them work on more than just Windows, trying to target other desktop platforms such as Mac. And this is really the first part of the work towards that goal. But along the way, we're doing some interesting changes. I hope you'll come to enjoy. So let's start. 2021, what we have done, we have rewritten essentially the authoring plugin API. We started with an API, C++ API, and we turned it around and make some changes that, in our opinion, improves the experience from a developer standpoint and hopefully benefits everyone. But again, why? We could just left it like it was. Like I said, better environment, but what exactly? We wanted to provide better backward compatibility, something that we tried to do manually by managing the way we build the API, and we add new elements to it. But now it's really ingrained into how the API is built. We've separated the backend and front end. So we have those now two different part of the plugin that have different concerns. And that helps us essentially trying to put what is the backend on all platforms that can generate sound banks, for example. And the front end can be built separately, even as an optional module, as we'll see soon. And we're trying to go, again, same goal, cross-platform, to more platform agnostic approach. And we'll see how exactly we've achieved that for 2021.1. Let me first introduce what is an authoring plugin. Perhaps you've been hearing me talking about that, but what exactly is it, and how does it differ from a sound engine plugin? The sound engine has a variety of plugins, essentially, that are built with the game, either as a static library, so it's included in the executable, or it's essentially a dynamic plugin which is loaded at runtime. That's fine. It works for the sound engine, but the authoring has its own version of that plugin. It's a separate file, separate library, and it comes in two parts. There's a part that is, yes, code. So it's a library. It's a DLL you've seen before. And it contains all the code, including backend and front-end that we're going to see. And more than that, it has also some description of what is a plugin. So what the properties are for that plugin, what does it contain, what can you tweak in that plugin. And so that's a separate thing from the sound engine. And everything in the authoring that you're using is meant for generating the sound banks that are going to be used by the sound engine. And what the authoring plugin does is help you accomplish that. Not only that, it also helps you with showing the data that your game is processing. So you have multiple plugins. They all have a different state, different runtime state, and you can look into that data. And you usually do that through some UI, right? On that front, we wanted to have better backward compatibility. So we have all those features in the authoring plugins that you can have. You can implement, of course, how to generate the sound bank. Like I just said, how you can visualize data in it. There's some license management. You can have custom object management. There's a bunch of stuff, and it was all into the same big class, the same gigantic beast. And so instead, we went with a way where we wanted to separate all those little components and services into different self-contained services that are built together into a plugin, essentially. So you can request different services. Here we have an audio plugin and a license, essentially, to construct your plugin, and then you implement those features into your plugin, and we can provide them. An interesting thing by separating those concerns into services is that we can version them. So that means that in the future, the version that you use to build your plugin can be adapted to the newer version of Wwise, so you can be compatible with what's going to have come as new or changed API. We've done that through a C API, essentially, that we wrapped in C++, so it gives a virtually equivalent feature set as before. The main backbone of the API now, however, is built on the C API and is very BI stable. So it does not really change unless we specifically change it. And of course, with the version, we can adapt it, so it's not a problem. That's why we now have backward compatibility, and we will commit to it in the later versions. Back and front end separation. So we have those puzzle pieces here. Those are the same ones I put earlier. What I'm trying to show here is that a plugin essentially has two big parts, and the backend is the one part that is used, for example, when you use the Wwise console to generate soundbank. It's the only part that deals with model, properties, how are they going to be put in the soundbank, in what format and stuff. And so that is only concerned with the model and how the soundbank is going to look like for the sound engine. Here, that generation happens in a separate module. So you have in your library different plugin instances, if you will, plugin types. And you can define one that just has those very specific concern. And that's sufficient, essentially, for your plugin. The rest is sound engine stuff, what's going to run in the game. And of course, that part is included in the authoring, so you can actually hear what your plugin is going to sound like. Console mode, like I just said. Front end, on the other hand, is user interface specific. So it's fundamentally attached to the front end, to what platform you're on and how stuff is displayed on the screen. And the interaction, essentially, that your plugin is going to offer. What we've done by separating it is centralize all those features into that smaller concern interface. And when you implement it, then you're saying to the authoring, I want a custom version of your UI. I don't just want you to provide a list of property. So of course, because of that, it's optional. If you don't want it, you have a simple plugin, you're starting out, you just want to have property to tweak. You don't specify a front end, a custom part of that plugin, and it's just going to be generated for you. Of course, monitoring data requires some form of custom UI, so that's not provided automatically. You would have to implement a front end to do that. So we're trying to build something that's a bit more separated and allows you to focus either on the back end, on the front end at different times, and perhaps in different steps. More platform agnostic. We had in the API Windows SDK types for the authoring part, such as variant stuff that dealt with properties and has been removed essentially in favor of more basic types and an API that understands that. The backend itself is fully platform independent, and part of that split meant that we could say the front end is mostly platform specific, or roughly is, and the backend is not. For example, in the backend, one thing we changed that's major is the wide encoding used on Windows. It's been replaced by UTF-8, and that's the general direction we're going to stray away from wide, because it's not very cross-platform. The front end on itself, it's a generalized concept, so you could have different types of front ends. Right now, we have the GUI windows, which is the exact same API that are concerned with front end that have now been centralized into that interface, that GUI Windows interface. So if you're migrating towards that, it's essentially just moving code around. And it does pave the way, though, for new front-end implementations, stuff that we are working on. So that's just a high level. I'm just going to cover the basic material. If you are migrating a plugin, so if you're a dev, hello. It's glad to have you. We have resources for you. So you're starting out, you have been working with 19.2 and previous, built the plugin, you want to put it out for 2021. There's a migration guide in the SDK documentation you can consult. It goes through all the stuff that has changed and what you had before and how to adapt it for 2021. Because it is a break and change between 19.2, that old API, and the 2021 API in the authoring. As the sound engine part is concerned, that has not changed in such major ways. There were additions, for example, in 2021. I'm thinking about object processors, which I invite you to read documentation about, to deal with object-based mixing and the general change in this direction. But for the authoring, this is not the object-based system has not affected how the authoring necessarily shows plugin information, except for monitoring data, which is another interesting topic, which I invite you to read for the SDK documentation. But we did add some, major additions, I would say, to different parts of the documentation, talking about also how they behave on Mac, since the application is currently ran through Wine, thanks to our friend from Codeweavers. And so pre-2021, don't be scared. It's still there. 19.2's API that you've been using for your plugin, it's marked as legacy. The files have not been moved. They're at the same place. So technically, you should be able to rebuild simple plugins. Of course, some changes have been made for 2021. Thing is, it's the last version where we are going to apply these changes to this API. Right now, all the new features are going to be added in the new authoring API. Creating your first plugin. So you have not been using it. So right now you can start with the fresh new authoring plugin API. We've added also some material. Damien was talking about the Wise Up on Air series, where we were covering essentially from the get-go. You have never even downloaded Wise. We go through that process and show even the development tools which we have developed, so you can just go around and start from template, and even you don't have to deal with any solution generation. It does a lot of stuff for you, and you can jump right into the DSP coding, and then we even go into looking at monitoring data and all that kind of stuff. So there's that, but also there's other stuff that you can see in the documentation. Olivier Bélanger and my team has written an excellent script, tutorial in the SDK documentation, developing a low-pass filter plugin. So if you're just starting out, want to first get your hands dirty, go read that. It's a guide, essentially. You go through all the steps, and you can write the first low-pass filter plugin and have it working in Wwise quite quickly. Wwise Up On Air I just mentioned, and of course, just want to see some code, see how it looks. We always have shipped in the SDK samples. They've been updated to the new authoring plugin API. So I invite you to just consult that. You can build them directly and see how they look in Wwise. They're already built for Wwise, so you can just start from there and see how they behave and see how what's the code that's driven them. Yeah, I think that's mostly it. It's a lot of stuff.
Fantastic overview, Samuel, and really as the cross-platform team lead, this plugin architecture and the evolution of that, I think as you hinted at, is part of this bigger picture of creating that cross-platform ecosystem in the best possible way for Wwise developers. Exactly.
Yeah, it's still on the main road. We're just going baby steps by baby step, but we'll get there, certainly.
Excellent. Well, thanks for sharing that. And again, some great resources there in the chat for folks who are tuned in. And yeah, thanks again so much for lending your expertise.
It's been a pleasure. Have a great rest of the worldwide event, everyone.
All right. Thanks so much.